Dark web users of Reddit. Was there ever a point in your use that you felt were genuinely in danger? What happened? Story 1. Not really a dark web user, but I got doxxed by a neo-Nazi group on the dark web and ended up having to use the dark web to find the websites that had my information. Department of Homeland Security and the FBI showed up on my doorstep because they were threatening to send me letter bombs and send people to abduct and rape me. It was scary shit. They all fell off the face of the earth recently, so I'm just hoping the feds got to them. Story 2. I was a casual orderer of the dark web for a while and got pretty big into it and started buying slightly bulky packages of drugs. If you knew the markets for a while, then you would know one called Alphabet was the best of the best. The Amazon of drugs and fraud would be its best description. However, it went down mysteriously one day and everyone assumed the owners just scammed everyone for their Bitcoin. Partially true, but in the background it was actually seized by the DEA. Everyone flocked to a new site called Hansa, which had some sketchy design features, but it was the next best alternative. Turns out the Dutch police took over the site and with the cooperation of multiple governments, ran a drug distribution onion site with over $1 million of transactions for around a month. They were gathering information from unsuspecting users, including me, who bought with faulty security practices. Now this is where I started freaking out. Imagine trafficking drugs through the mail and the Attorney General at the time, Jeff Sessions, makes a speech live on television that he was going to crack down and explicitly explains how fucked everyone in Hansa was because they've been gathering data for over a month. And in a big dick energy move, closes the site and puts up a banner in its place saying everyone who has purchased will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law during his live speech. I was shitting myself for a month, as many arrests did occur, but luckily I guess I wasn't important enough and nothing happened to me. Story 3. I own a fairly rare car that had a rare error code. I looked it up on Google and there was only one other person on the car maker's forum that had the same error. This guy took months and months going back and forth between car shops in the forum thread to try to get the issue fixed. Everyone in the forum was pitching in to try to help him, so I kept going through this long forum thread to try to figure out if he ever fixed it. And suddenly there are no more replies from the guy. Everyone was scratching their heads for a while. We thought he had maybe gotten the issue fixed and didn't bother to update us on it. Then one day a news article popped up about a really rich guy who died in a Thai jail cell. And then we connected the two stories and they matched up. The same make and model of the car in the news article matched up with his car. They were both claiming to be in Thailand at the time. So what happened was that the same guy who was still talking on the forum got raided by the Thai police around the same time he stopped replying to the forum. Turns out that he was running one of the biggest dark web marketplaces where drugs were being sold and exchanged. It had something like $1 million in revenue per day, and he was hiding out in Thailand while living in luxury. They found him dead in his jail cell a few days later. They claimed he died of suicide. I suppose you're talking about Cases, the funder of Alphabet. The dude was stupid enough to use his real email ID, the one he was using for LinkedIn and all legal businesses, taxes, etc., to send welcome messages to people who signed up on the website. Story 4. Not the modern dark web, but back in the days of the Usenet, I posted some harsh criticism in alt.religion.scientology. The online threats were funny, but when I started getting death threats by mail, I backed the fuck off. For a little more backstory, I posted a bunch of criticisms of the COS in the Usenet group alt.religion.scientology. This was in the late 90s and well before most modern forums and content aggregators like Reddit existed. Fark was the big one and Dig was just starting to get popular. I was in high school and was using my home computer as an FTP server for a Where's group on IRC, because I convinced my dad to sign up for a 90-day free trial of this new thing called broadband. It had 3 Mbps down and 1.5 Mbps up. Of course, we never cancelled it. They figured out who I was by using a cute FTP vulnerability to get root directory access to my PC. The death threats were bad enough, but what really sticks with me is the malice of deleting my family photos, including the last picture is us with my dad while he was alive. I was the typical invincible feeling young adult and I was more concerned about worrying my mom than I was about my own safety. This was long before doxing was a thing, and online threats going from email to handwritten letters was terrifying, but as a high school kid, I never would have admitted it. Nobody asked, but if I was confronted in person, I would have fought back. 18 years later, if they really held a grudge and threatened me again with the same malice expressed in those letters I got, I would open the door with a gun in hand, and if they tried to get in, I would assume that they were intending to kill me and shoot first. Story 5. There are hitmen, human trafficking, snuff films, and such, but a vast majority of these sites are scams asking you to send them Bitcoin. A small portion of users on the dark web would be there for this sort of stuff. However, buying drugs online is quite popular and widespread. Single vendors can have $500,000+ in lifetime sales. You use PGP to encrypt your address so only the seller of the drugs has access to your private info. If your package is seized, law enforcement has no proof you ordered it unless they seize your computer and you have that information stored on it. You can use Tails or USB to avoid this. Even if your package gets seized, you'll often get a quote-unquote love letter saying what they seized and there's no follow-up after that. Story 6. Not dark web, but I used to work for a disabled guy. He'd been pretty badly disabled for 20 years and spent most of his time gaming and watching films. He was there early on when torrenting and file sharing started. He even said that he topped some lists of most prolific downloaders worldwide in the early days. Could be bragging, I don't know. He told me he'd only ever had any issues once. He downloaded a film for his kids, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. He was in the habit of checking every film before he lets his kids watch, but didn't this time. Just hit play. He looked up at the screen after a minute or so to see a Snow White-themed child porn video playing. 1 woman, 7 kids, etc. He didn't go into detail or say how much his kids saw, just that he freaked out, exited the file, and then went to the bathroom to throw up. Story 7. Religious Silk Road and CGMC user here. I used to get the stuff delivered to my dorm, but the package didn't come directly to my room. I had to go pick it up from my dorm's building office. For my 3rd or 4th order from Silk Road, I got an email saying that a package had arrived for me, but when I went to pick it up, I was told by a resident assistant that my package was in the DOR's office. I got freaked out. I also, for some reason, was getting a lot of spam calls, which just added to my anxiety. I was scared shitless. I didn't go to pick it up for like 4 days, meanwhile I kept getting emails from the DOR's office to come get my package. I didn't go because I thought that was a setup, but after a couple of days I said fuck it and went to pick up my package. I had paid a lot of Bitcoin for that order and wanted to consume what I had ordered. When I got there, I realized that I was freaking out for no reason. The people holding on to my order couldn't have been nicer. They couldn't give me a reason why that package was delivered there and not to my dorm, so I just kept ordering more. Edit. The package was always delivered by USPS Priority, which is run by the federal government, and I went to a state university. So technically, the federal government transported funny stuff to the state government for me. Story 8. Not the dark web, but mid-90s web. I was 12 and obviously puberty was in control. These were chat room days. Kid I was acquainted with, an Eagle Scout nonetheless, had all these floppy disks full of pornographic images from some asshole supposedly in Texas. I and a few other friends were over puberty, so we were eager to see naked women. It soon took a quick turn with girls that were likely my age. I immediately noped the fuck out and never really talked to the kid again. But knowing the Boy Scouts, I wasn't getting involved. But I was 13 and didn't even want to tell my mom I was interested in women. I regret that day a lot. I should have called the police. Sadly, I just compartmentalized it. 1996 was weird. Story 9. Someone who isn't me was on a drug marketplace once, where heroin, crack cocaine, and sometimes PCP are listed, but if you're experienced, you don't even bat an eye. What that person did see once were pills pressed from the residue powders that ostensibly covered the press. These included mixtures of meth, fentanyl, Xanax, Molly, amphetamines, GHB. Shit is scary because you have no idea what exactly ratio the mixture will be composed of. And with heavy-hitting, high-OD potential drugs like fentanyl, everyone wouldn't be surprised if that particular listing led to multiple overdoses. Right. Definitely someone who wasn't you. Story 10. Be safe, boys and girls. Don't give out your information or communicate with others. And if you plan on purchasing anything, use a secure Linux OS like Tails, use private keys, connect to a public Wi-Fi spot, not your house. Encrypt all messages, use multi-signature markets so your chances of losing your Bitcoin lessens. Escrow preferably. Never send your Bitcoins from a wallet attached to you directly to the seller. Tumble your coins first. And when the package arrives, don't open it for a few days. A friend of mine gave me all this info and told me I should help you guys out. Story 11. Everything feels government-owned. I used to frequent drug sites. They would go down for weeks at a time, then pop up again and have weird prices. Sellers were different. It made the dark web feel like a labyrinth more than a ruleless wasteland. Story 12. So I had ordered many times in the dark web, but one day I decided to place a rather large order of ecstasy pills from Europe to the USA. I had a terrible feeling in my gut after the order was placed and actually had some serious food poisoning or something that night. Lol. Cut 2 weeks later, I ended up getting arrested for the pills and entered the worst time of my entire life. Story 13. I actually learned how to access the dark web by listening to National Public Radio. They had a segment where an author who was writing a book about it basically gave step-by-step instructions on how to do it. I did everything he said, and by golly, it worked. Truthfully, it was pretty underwhelming. Mostly just drugs and counterfeit items, passports, money, etc. I did find some weapons with a serial number scratched off, pistols and shotguns, but nothing that would start World War III. I also saw a couple of ads for hitmen, but they seemed pretty hokey and were most likely undercover cops. I never felt in danger, but I have never gone back because there's nothing I really want from there. No government agents have kicked down my door either. Story 14. The idea that the dark web is an extremely shocking and dangerous place is largely inaccurate. It's mostly weird libertarian blogs and very sterile Amazon-type websites for drugs, complete with reviews of different vendors. Story 15. I've written a couple of books about the dark web, which means I've spent a bit of pretty much every day of the past 8 years poking around inside. Over the years, I spoke to, interviewed, and even visited many dark web identities, drug dealers and operators of darknet markets mostly. I attended the trial of one of the evilest people on the planet. Lux, the owner of Herd to the Core, a child torture site, turned out to be a friendless, unhappy kid who built his evil empire from his childhood bedroom, with his parents blissfully unaware of what was happening under their noses. The only time I felt even slightly in danger despite all this nosing around in there was when I helped uncover a hitman scam. The owner of Bessa Mafia, the most profitable murder-for-hire site in history, came after me when I started writing about him. He made loads of threats. "You don't know who I am, but I know who you are and where you live." But that wasn't scary, as I had access to the back door of his site thanks to a friendly hacker and knew he didn't really want to hurt anybody. It took a bit of a darker turn when he told the people who had signed up to work as hitmen on his site, and who he made videos themselves burning cars with signs on them to advertise how legit the site was, that never sent them the promised money for doing so, that I was the owner of the site who had ripped them off. That could have become ugly, but luckily even the thugs weren't dumb enough to believe him. The only other time I've been a bit nervous was when Homeland Security wanted to have a friendly meeting with me on one of my trips to the US to attend a trial. They were friendly, but scary too. The books about all the above and other dark web stuff are here. Story 16. I've used the dark web once or twice. The scariest thing was when my screen went black for a few moments and turned back on. It wasn't anything big, just my display cable fucking up, but it did give me the creeps. As for darker, disturbing shit, I've only found a list of random addresses. The dark web really has a lot of stigmas associated with it. For the most part, it's just people curious about the dark web or people trying to scam you or sell you drugs. You have to do a lot of looking to find the really fucked up stuff. You're more likely to find dark web type crap on Reddit or YouTube than on the actual dark web. Story 17. Every time, remember that the person you just bought drugs from knows, number 1, your address, number 2, that you have drugs in your house, number 3, there's probably evidence of dark web usage in your finances, computer, or trash. They can rat you out with impunity just because they're feeling malevolent. They also could just get caught and be careless with destroying ex-customer information, so it hangs over my head to this day. Story 18. I never felt in danger using the dark net, but I did almost lose everything to it. I started in the Alpha Bay days, then Dream, and eventually Empire, which to my knowledge is still operating to this day. I ordered everything and anything, mainly out of curiosity. I wouldn't say I had a problem with anything in particular until the day I ordered crystal meth. Fast forward a few years later and I was slamming it and using it daily. I almost chose meth over my wife and 2 beautiful boys. And no one was the wiser, besides eventually my wife. No one at work knew. For the most part, I was pretty good at hiding my use, although I feel like I would have been caught eventually. 69 days sober today. I still struggle, but life is better. Story 19. I occasionally check my spam mail folder, so I found an email with one of my passwords as the subject. It totally got my attention. On reading it, it said he was able to get into my laptop by installing malware the last time I visited a porn site, and has a few videos of me that he captured from the last 15 days, including a masturbating video. He'll forward it to everyone in my contacts if I don't pay him some $2,000 of bitcoins. I was sweating for 10 minutes before I decided to check. I have a bad memory, so I saved all my passwords in the browser. When checking it, it was the previous password that was mentioned in the subject mail. When checking hibp.com, I realized that Yahoo server was exploited some 2 months back, and this guy might have gotten the password from there. Anyways, there's no point in negotiating with a blackmailer. I'll just send another email with more money next time, so I let it go. Never received another email like that again. Story 20. I heard about all the dark web stuff when I was about 12 or 13, so I decided to look around, thinking it wouldn't be that bad. There were a few odd moments, chat boxes popping up, but can't remember what they said to me. Found plenty of sites selling stolen tech for cheap, counterfeit money, Silk Road alternatives, etc. I can't remember what the site was called, but I think it may have mentioned something about dead bodies. I've always had a strong sense of morbid curiosity, especially when I was young, so I clicked. At first, nothing was worse than things you might see on R5050, but then there were odd things like photos that weren't already publicly available. It was mentioned in the title, description, or comments, but I can't remember which. Obviously quite unsettling that these may have been genuine murderers or serial killers. Anyway, I suddenly scrolled onto what I still refer to as the worst thing I have ever seen. It was a completely skinned human. but they still had their eyes and teeth. They were skinned down to their muscles and tied up. Immediately closed my browser. I was 13, and up until then had never felt such a sudden sense of sadness, panic, and fear. It's been 7 years and I can still vividly see the image in my head, although I try not to think about it. Story 21. I wasn't in danger per se, just felt scared as fuck. I was at a library browsing because I've heard stories about the dark web and people finding out where you live, so I was already kind of scared going into it. I went there after school like 3 times a week and tried to find scary stuff. I didn't find anything interesting for the first month or so. After a while, I found a pretty interesting site. It was sort of like Craigslist, but on the dark web. People were selling drugs in themselves, just like reading the ads. Some of them were pretty funny. Like I was trying to find scary stuff, but instead, I found the nicest guy in the world asking if I wanted to buy heroin. The really scary stuff came after a guy sent me a private message. I don't know how because I hadn't made a post on the site, so there was no way he could contact me. But I was a dumbass, so I didn't question it at the time. He asked me vague questions about my sexual preferences, and I was having a hard time answering because I didn't speak or write or understand English as well as I do now. Also, I was 13, so I probably wasn't able to answer them in my first language either. I don't remember how the conversation went exactly, but I guess he liked what I said because he sent me a link and, like a dumbass, I opened it. I'll never forget what I saw. It looked kind of like Facebook in dark mode. The first post I saw there was of an unconscious naked woman who was bleeding a lot between her legs. The person who posted it also put a long caption in the pic, but I just remember the first line. She screamed like a bitch. I noped out of that site quickly. I closed the browser and the computer, picked up my stuff, and never went back to that library again.
Gamers of Reddit, what are these strangest things you've heard over an open mic? Story 1. Several years ago, I was doing a 40-person raid in World of Warcraft. Many people in the guild were from California, and at the time I lived in Oakland. We hear one guy around Napa call out, "Whoa!" and then a few seconds later, I feel a pretty substantial earthquake and announce it over vent. A few seconds, a couple of people around San Jose chime in and they're surprised too. It was pretty cool to hear how the quake rippled south in real time. Story 2. Not really strange as in creepy, but I was playing a CSGO match when a kid on my team yelled, "Ha! Get f***ed," after getting a kill. Then our team hears him screaming, crying, and begging for forgiveness from his mother beating him for cussing that loud. Story 3. Was getting full-on cussed out by a kid easily about 5 or 6. He was literally saying, "F*** you, you f***ing k***. I hope Satan rips your ass and gets his splooge in your eyes, you stupid little ass fuck." So we started firing back at him with everything we had. We kinda made him cry. Then his mom gets on the mic and starts yelling at us. She's telling us how we're setting a bad example for her child and that we shouldn't be using that kind of language around someone his age. So we went off on her too, explained that her kid was being a sailor-mouthed little She started yelling at us, saying that her kid can do whatever he wants. So we said that if he's gonna talk shit like an adult, then he's gonna have shit talked back to him like he's an adult. She gets even more pissed. This is the best part, and I'm still laughing about this. The f***ing grandmother gets on the mic and starts spouting off to us. She's saying that her daughter is a fantastic mother and that we need to leave them alone or she's gonna call the police. We managed to piss a kid off so badly that we got yelled at by 3 generations of that family in the span of a few minutes. God, it was fantastic. For those of you that are curious, we were playing Advanced Warfare. Story 4. I thought this was a really good story given the question. I have legitimately heard someone on my team break up with his girl during a game of Dota on voice. He was using open mic and she was like, "Get off that stupid game and take me out to dinner," in this horribly entitled voice. After around 10 minutes of him being calm and saying things like, "It's okay baby, just let me finish the game, I'll get punished if I leave," and her just not understanding that she issued an ultimatum, "If you don't turn that game off right now and take me to dinner, I am leaving." And he just typed in chat, "Pause please, need to break up with my girlfriend." And everyone lulled and paused and the dude just went ballistic, like, "This is my apartment. You stay on my dime and I buy you all of your food. I give you money to go shopping. You don't get to issue ultimatums to me when you don't have shit without me. Get the f*** out of my apartment. This relationship is over." And then it was lots of crying and yelling and bringing up all the shit that he did wrong in the past as if it was gonna help, and eventually he just said, "Sorry, the relationship is over. I don't care. Bring a truck and one of those douchebag bar guys you love to f***, so much, we'll get your stuff tomorrow. See if any of them are willing to clothe, feed, house, and you. Everyone on voice chat just went, "Oh," and we were typing everything that was happening to the enemy team. He eventually got her out of the apartment, and boy did it sound like the guy had a world of pressure off his shoulders. After the game, I friended him. We still talk on Steam sometimes. He really ended the relationship and ended up just putting all her shit in a storage locker when she didn't come to get it for a week. He has a new girl now who apparently isn't as awful. Story 5. Was playing League while talking to some guys over TeamSpeak. The dude says that he'll be right back but leaves his mic on. Out of nowhere, you hear him and his dad get into a massive fight. When the fight was nearly over, we heard the dad scream, "And why does your room smell like shit?" And the kid replies, "'Cause I shit in it." Dude hasn't been back on that TeamSpeak since. Story 6. I tend to stay pretty quiet when I'm playing online games, but there was a memorable moment that occurred about a year ago while I was playing TF2. The honest truth of the matter is that I'm absolutely terrible at most first-person shooters. If I'm lucky, I'll manage to score a single kill, maybe two, before being offed by an opponent that I didn't notice. This fact was apparently unforgivable, and a young man who was offended by my skills, or lack thereof, wasted no time or breath in informing me of my failures. "Oh my god," he shouted, "you suck. Seriously, you suck. I can't believe how much you suck." At first, I ignored the tirade. As time went on, though, I realized that the fellow didn't appear able to say anything beyond, "Oh my god, I seriously can't believe how much you suck." His entire vocabulary could be seemingly derived from those 12 words. I took it as a challenge. After fumbling a bit to figure out which key activated my microphone, I responded back with a tirade of my own, while imitating Kermit the Frog's voice. "Hey man," I finally responded, "I heard you got kicked out of the military school for being too boring." Don't ask me what I meant by that. It was a nonsensical insult that was intended to provoke the fellow. "Fuck you," my controversial opponent shouted. It seemed like my verbal jab had done the trick, as there was suddenly a tone of real rage in his voice. "Fuck you, you you suck, God!" I did my best to suppress a laugh and then switched to an intimidating Cookie Monster.
"Me no think that you be having a good grasp of English. Me think you only know words like suck. Me thinking you should learn new words like cookie."
"Fuck you, you are seriously the biggest loser."
"Whoa," I replied, still as Cookie Monster. "You use some new words. Now say cookie."
The young man's frustration was audibly increasing as he shouted, "Fuck you," back at me. And was that a twinge of fear that I detected?
"Cookie?"
I replied.
Stop, you're creepy and you suck."
There was definitely some sort of mounting discomfort in the guy's voice. Had I discovered, I wonder, the one individual on the planet with a phobia about Muppets?
"Cookie!"
Stop around."
I went silent for a few seconds. Then, starting in a low, ominous growl and moving up into a tone of manic insanity, I went for the kill.
"Cookie?"
As much as I'd love to say that that young man burst into tears, disconnected, and left the world of online gaming forever, the truth of the matter is more mundane, though not by much. Midway through the long-winded bellow, the guy flipped out and starts screaming in near gibberish. The occasional f*** and so on were still audible, but it seemed like he had been reduced to offering wordless exclamations while his voice cracked. This went on for the rest of the match. The guy didn't stop until the very end when he managed to squeak out a final "F you, you suck" before disconnecting. My team lost the match, but I like to think that I won the war. Story 7. Back when Modern Warfare 2 was in its heyday, I joined a lobby that happened to have a bunch of Brits queued together. When teams were made, they were all on one team, and my team was all random Americans. One of us says, "Oh, hey, it's funny how that happened," to which one of the Brits replies, "Shut up, you fat American pig!" By God, it was on at that point. It was American Revolution Part 2, Freedom Rings Twice. To their credits, it was super close. But we wanted, not needed, to win so bad that we became a fine-tuned machine and began dominating. By the last 10 seconds of the match, we knew that we had won and began chanting USA, USA, USA over and over. They tried to object, but our chants were just too much and they left the lobby. I haven't found an experience like that ever again, but God, it was amazing. Story 8. My girlfriend used to play World of Warcraft a lot and was playing with her guild, and during a break, she started playing with her dog and baby talking to it. She accidentally hadn't muted her mic, so her whole guild was listening and they kept quiet and recorded it. The audio track was on the guild website for a while. Story 9. I was on a co-op mission in World War II flight sim. There were about 16 of us playing and one guy was pretty wasted. We were cruising along on the way to the target area when suddenly we started hearing snoring. Loud snoring. Some guys started yelling, "Wake up!" but to no avail. And shortly after we heard a loud crashing and rattling over the comms, followed by an, "Oh fuck, son of a bitch, I'm fucking bleeding." Guy passed out and smashed his head onto the floor. Couldn't finish the mission because we were all laughing so hard. Story 10. Raided with a gal during Blackwing Lair who has 2 kids around the same age. It'd be around 11 p.m. and we'd hear these elementary school aged kids say stuff like, "Mommy, we're hungry," and she'd respond with, "Not now, Mommy's raiding." We booted her after about a month though because she was an awful healer. Also, there was an off-tank during Black Temple that lived with his mother for cultural reasons. Every now and then, we'd hear his mom start shouting at him in some North African language, and he'd start shouting right back. The dude was a complete fuckwad and would not use push to talk. Real arrogant but a great tank that we had trouble replacing. And there was the terrible paladin who flat out refused to listen to any suggestions I made to him. So he ultimately got the boot once we were able to replace him. After he was kicked out, he messaged the GM accusing him of discrimination and threatening to sue. Apparently the shitty paladin was in a wheelchair, which absolutely no one was aware of, so what? Story 11. My raid group was pretty diverse. 2 guys from the Bronx, myself and another from the UK, and a few from Norway, Finland, and one from Ukraine. We were pretty new to the game and hadn't cleared the final boss of a very tough raid yet, but we were coming close. One of the Bronx guys died straight away, lag issues constantly, but we'll never kick him, but proceeded to do a live freestyle rap about what each person was doing in the raid in lieu of a commentary. It was amazing. Wish we had recording software back then. The second was the Ukraine guy. Just signs on to TeamSpeak one day and says, "War has broken out, I won't be on for the raid." Laughs, signs out, and then repeats the same message in-game to the guildies who weren't on TeamSpeak. Kinda worried for a few weeks, but he eventually managed to contact one of us via our forum to say that all was well and he'd move back to a new/safer city with his family while things died down. Can't wait for him to get back. His DPS was straight up demonic. Story 12. My World of Warcraft raid leader's wife masturbating and having a screaming orgasm while we were raiding Black Temple. He took his headset off and queued it up just as she got off next to him. It was a weird guild. Oh, and in Wrath, in the same guild, we were working on 3 Drake Sartharian when one of our mages yelled, "AFK mom on fire!" mid-pull. Turned out she really did catch on fire while cooking. He had to take her to the emergency room. Hey guys, you enjoying the video? If so, please like and subscribe. It means a lot and really helps the channel. Anyway, back to the stories. Story 13. Was playing Call of Duty a few years ago and there were a bunch of kids mouthing off. I'm 35. I generally ignored it and I tried to be a good sport because they were just being kids. I get my ass totally handed to me as usual, and am sitting in the lobby after a particularly brutal loss when one of the kids goes, "Hey dude, do you like dragons?" Yeah, I guess. That's good because I was dragging my nuts across your face the entire game. I'll admit, I still laugh thinking about it now. Story 14. Raiding Kara in World of Warcraft. Backstory, there was this player, Josh Warrior, who had joined our guild. He was, as one can easily deduce, a warrior. He was as terrible can be. Didn't know what rotation was, couldn't gear properly. He was only like 11, so he let us slide. But his general inability to learn or even try to learn made his life as a guildmate short. The story. It was near the end of BC and my druid tank wasn't very geared relative to the endgame, so I would use him to help out new, fresh guilds get through Kara. As I could sleep through any encounter and still maintain aggro and not really worry, I decided to help out this one guild, and who shows up? Josh Warrior. I lulled and continued on. My bear was indestructible. Vent was a fun conversation. Everyone was chill and thankful for my help. I don't really remember where we were in the raid when suddenly Josh Warrior flatly proclaims, "My dad just had a heart attack. I think he's dead." Progress comes to a stop. Holy sh! Did he need to go help him? Did he want to leave? We'd get a replacement. No, the ambulance is here and my dog is really big. If I go out of my room, he'll definitely go out and attack the paramedics. The most awkward silence ever ensued, and we continued on through a few trash packs. Finally, their guild leader stops the raid and starts asking how Josh is doing. Fine, I think he's dead. We can keep going through, I just want some loot. We finished the rest of the raid in near complete silence except for me coordinating the encounters. I've never felt so awkward over Vent. Nobody else uttered a word. Every person from the guild whispered apologies and gave resounding thanks. That was by far the most memorable and f***ed up raid ever. Story 15. I guess I would call it strange because I've never experienced anything like it before or after this happened. I was playing an 8v8 in Halo 3. I had just started getting into the online world of it and was really enjoying myself. So I looked for a match and get sent to the lobby right before we went straight to the game. If I recall correctly, you would get to vote on what type of match and the map that you wanted to play in. So as we do that, one of the guys starts a beat. Then a second guy joins in on the exact beat. I recognized it as the We Will Rock You by Queen beat. Then one guy starts singing it and the next verse was something else. And the song went on and on. I even pitched in. After we finish, no one can even recognize what had happened and the normal chat continues. It was pretty cool and it has never happened again since then. I tried to initiate it once or twice but ended up making a fool of myself. No better way to intimidate the enemy team than with the full Skyrim theme tune in a barbershop quartet style. Story 16. This story isn't so much as something accidentally heard through a mic, but the other player's reaction to it. We had this mage character in our guild on World of Warcraft. Our guild wasn't anything terribly special, just doing Molten Core, Onyxia, and BWL before Burning Crusade came out. Back in the good old days when you had class-specific chat channels to coordinate class-specific jobs 10% of the time, and rag on all the other inferior classes 90% of the time, at the time of this story we were pretty new and just doing Onyxia regularly. Sometimes took 2 attempts and had about 30 people. And hadn't downed Ragnaros until a month later. Anyway, this guy had been in the guild since his 50s, and we're happy that he was finally able to start raiding. Pretty fun guy, really sarcastic, really good mage. Never gave his age, but from the way he wrote and carried on a conversation, he seemed like a college or graduate kid student in his mid-20s. Anyway, raids mean Ventrilo, so he joined up in the channel. He claimed that he didn't have a mic and he always responded in the chat. To make a long story short, a few months after he started raiding, one evening 2 guys got kicked deep into the whelps and woke like 90% of them up. Rather than, "Many whelps, handle them!" our guild leader just called for us to wipe. Suddenly, this really high-pitched voice comes over the vent and says,
Forget that! Keep going! Nobody else touch the whelps. Everyone else on vent shut up. We'll handle this. Mages, grab the whelps and come to the center. Anyone with whelps, come to the center. Group 3 healers, you're with us.
Nobody knew what the hell was going on, but we went with it. Lucky me, I had the talent for a 70% slowing blizzard. So I got to be the main kite. Humbling and terrifying experience of kiting over 100 whelps, with some random girls keeping me alive by coordinating half a dozen frost novas. She had us run in circles along the bottom of the lair for 8 minutes. And she freaking pulled it off. It took a minute for us to realize exactly who this chick was. Wait a sec, we don't have any girl mages, what the frick? But everyone was too focused to comment on it. When the raid was finally over, everyone is laughing, and the comments start coming out. We thought you were a guy, didn't know you were a girl, etc.
I am a guy.
He says he's about 12 and more or less the size of a 9-year-old. Says fun raid and logs off pretty quickly after that. You can imagine the many freakouts that followed. The cognitive dissonance was fantastic. About a third of the people there refused to believe that this person was so young and decided that him being a 24-year-old girl lying about her age and gender was far more believable than their friend being that young. This person was very sarcastic and prank-toned, to be fair. Logic along the lines of, a little kid can't fake being that old. They always referred to the guy as her after that. They just couldn't believe the one who had saved the raid single-handedly was still in middle school and whose voice hadn't dropped. The guild leader at least was pretty cool with it. Even asked him to help lead some Onyxia runs after that, and be mage lead a month later when our main one left. Kid flat out refused, said he couldn't take his own voice seriously and wouldn't expect any of the raid leaders to, much less the players. Can't blame him. There were certainly people that mocked him after that, though happy to say it was a small minority. He was a pretty cool kid. Can't pretend I didn't screw with my own perceptions, but I figured I liked him and respected him before I knew his age, so nothing really changed between us. But it was hilarious to hear 30 teenage and college and middle-aged guys and a few girls obsess over learning that they had just gotten shown up and rescued by a middle schooler hiding amongst them. At the very least, that was the first moment I really appreciated the internet as the great equalizer. Story 17. Last week I was playing GTA Online in a heist with some kids. The youngest one was maybe 12 or 13 max. During a setup mission, his mom entered the room and told him to get off the Xbox. All he does is play games, etc. He told her that he couldn't because he was almost done with an online mission and he would quit after. We finish the mission and start to queue up for the finale. Someone asks if he needs to log off and he says, "Nah, I'll just tell her it's the same mission." Mid-finale mission, static starts to come over the mic and it sounds like a scuffle. Then you heard him pleading, "No, please don't turn it off, you can't do this, there are other players, I can't quit, it will end their game too." In a no fucks given, dead serious, angry mom voice, I hear, "Your dad is in jail because of you. We're going to lose our house because of you." Silence. Log off. A few minutes later, he was back in party chat. "Sorry guys, we're having family problems and my mom gets like that. She's a salty cunt." Story 18. So this was on Burnout 2, maybe, I'm not sure. It was on Xbox Live. My wife is playing and this little kid comes over and starts talking shit to her. She said something about, "I'm going to tell your mom," and the kid replies, "My mom died in 9/11. My wife, without missing a beat, "Well, glad something good happened that day," and the kid just starts bawling his brains out. Apparently, he wasn't lying about that. My wife spends the next 3 hours talking to the kid online like a mother. She played with him for half a year or so, helping him with homework and different things in his life. Then one day, he just vanished from online. My wife is now a PC gamer, but she makes me pay for Xbox Live and she logs in once every month or so to see if the kid has been online. I want to say it's been 5 years and she hasn't spoken to him. Story 19. Back in World of Warcraft days, vented some Sunwell Plateau raids with somebody who had turned out to be like 5 years old and more interested in the colors on the screen than the task at hand. We were all ready to land hard on a poor performer. But when we realized it was still a kid and maybe a slow kid at that, everyone tried to be as nice as possible while still keeping the raid together. It was actually one of the nicer World of Warcraft experiences I had.
People who have met their online friends, what made you instantly regret it? Story 1. I, Leia, 22 years old, had a friend, Marco, 26 years old, online for 11 years before we met. I'm Canadian, he's American. We met at an RP role-playing site when we were quite literally still kids and were a massive part of one another's lives, especially during our teenage years. We spoke every day through text, on the phone, and had each other on social media. We even knew and sometimes spoke to each other's family and friends in real life. He called me his light and his sister, and I called him my brother. We were family. It would take a whole novel to explain our 11-year friendship and what we have been through together, but I'll just try to make it short by saying he had a very shitty and unstable life and a lot of mental health problems. He was a narcissist. I spent many years being his emotional crutch and punching bag, helping him find jobs and being there for his breakdowns. I never broke off the friendship because, after all those years, I kind of felt responsible for him. Anyways, last year we finally decided to meet. We were both grown adults and saved money to go on a 10-day trip to a dream destination of mine in the States. I knew this likely would not go well. I knew he was a narcissist, but I just had to meet him. I had to meet my brother, the guy that was there for over a decade. I needed to see him face to face. On this trip, he abandoned me on a mountain during a hike because he decided he wanted weed. When he came back, I was obviously mad and wanted to go back to our hotel, but he told me to wait for him in the car while he did the hike on his own. I took an Uber home and he returned as well 4 hours later. He also automatically assumed I'd shell out $300 for him to buy a laptop he wanted without asking me. Just brought me to the store to look around while we waited for our movie to start at the theater and sprung it on me. I refused. He was overall inconsiderate. We only ate at places where he wanted to eat and only when he wanted to eat. Only did things he wanted to do and not me, despite the trip being my idea. I missed out on a lot because he just wanted to sit around and do nothing and so much more. What hurt the most is when I confronted him about it, he told me, "You're not my girlfriend. I don't need your approval or need to change for you to like me." I cut the friendship off and blocked him when we returned home. I also plan on retaking my dream trip one day and doing it properly this time. Story 2. I was 13 and had a 20-year-old pen pal in Hong Kong, both of us female. We met on Tumblr and emailed each other regularly. My parents were CC'd, carbon copied, in all of our correspondence, and we basically just talked about our cultures. About a year of us talking went by, and she said that her university allowed her to study abroad in Europe for a semester, and she chose my country. Fun! I was excited. However, some time went by, and our friendship kind of faded, to the point where I had forgotten she was even coming to my country. About 2 weeks before she was supposed to come, she emailed me that her student accommodation had to be cleaned out, so she couldn't access it on the night she arrived. She needed a place to stay for one night. I asked my mom, and she agreed to pick her up from the airport with me, and she could stay with us for one night. I mean, we trusted this girl. I was very open about my friendship with her. We had pictures and everything. So 2 weeks later, we pick her up from the airport, and we didn't click. She kinda annoyed me, but it was late, and so we just went home. We get home and get her settled. We went up to my room, she gave me some presents, and we chat a little bit. She says, "Thanks for letting me stay here this semester." Huh? Excuse me? This semester? I asked her, what do you mean? You can stay here tonight. We can see each other during the weekends if you want to hang out, but you can't stay here. She goes quiet. We go to sleep. At this point, I just wanted her to go away, and I got what I wanted. The next morning, I woke up and she was gone. I don't even know how she got out because we locked the doors at night, but she just vanished. We have special locks that you need a key for to open, and the key was somewhere else in the house. Yes, I think this is a fire hazard. No, my mom can't be convinced it's unnecessary. Her suitcase was still there. I tried calling her, but she didn't pick up. She eventually texted me, asking if my mother could drop off her suitcase at a train station 40 minutes away at a certain time. My mother brought the suitcase, and that was that. Never saw her or spoke to her again after that. Now that I think about it, I have a theory about why this went down like it did. She most likely put down my address on her visa application as her place of residence during her stay, and needed to stay in my house in case immigration was going to check if she was actually there. Also, if you're wondering why she annoyed me, she treated my mother like a taxi driver, and she shot down everything I said to her. She was rude to me until she gave me the presents, after which she directly started talking about staying with me the whole semester. She didn't want to talk to me after I said that I had told her she could stay for one night on that exact date. I told her we could discuss it with my parents in the morning. Her and my English were both great, and we had discussed specific dates. Story 3. Maybe I didn't regret it, but it gave me years of depression. I met my best friend through Minecraft. I have never made friends in this, and I just wanted to play with someone, so I have no idea why I complimented this girl's skin. We started talking. She was an American, I'm Polish, and my English sucked. We moved to Skype, and at first, I mostly typed. But later on, she started teaching me English somehow by talking with me. She was 1 year older, and I was staying up all night just to talk to her and her friends that she introduced to me. She was also depressed, so we talked with each other, and she was the first person that truly listened to me. We had plans of visiting each other, and then our mutual friend told me she committed suicide. 4 years passed by, and now at least I can talk about it and not cry. Still miss her very much, though. Story 4. When I was 19, I jumped on a flight to meet a friend I had known for about 4 to 5 months. We both went through family bereavements and were a shoulder to cry on for each other, via the phone or the internet, and we just decided to meet for a few days in a country between us. Until then, everything had been perfect. She was the coolest girl, really smart, the kind of person you want to be around all the time. When we met, things started great, but a day later she confessed, "You're not what I expected." What? Being a 19-year-old and not very confident, this knocked me sideways. "I don't know, just you seem different," she said. I never hid who I was before we met, was completely open, and it put a real sour taste on the rest of my time with her. Instead of chatting nonstop and watching jackass on TV in the hotel at night, we went quiet and straight to sleep, and ate in silence. I put as much effort as I could into it, but I still never got to the bottom of how I was different. We went our separate ways, texted for a few days, then never spoke again. Story 5. It was my friend Kate who befriended this girl Jessica, who allowed us to come and stay with her when we traveled to the United States. Jessica was rude to me instantly and kept my friend away from me. I'd go upstairs and she'd find a reason for them to go downstairs. She had Kate share her bedroom, and she'd lock the door for hours, so I'd just go off and do my own thing. We met her two odd friends, and they both ignored me. When it was time for Kate and me to move on to another state, Jessica insisted on coming with us. The lady we stayed with in another state, Robin, took no shit and called Jessica out on her strange behavior. Jessica proceeded to lock herself in a room and demanded Kate stay in there with her. They were in there all day, and eventually, Kate came out and said to me that there was something wrong with Jessica, and she was actually scared. We, Kate and I, had plans to stay with another friend, Matt, in another state, and Jessica demanded we cancel because she doesn't like or trust Matt. We said no, this is our holiday and we've paid for flights. And Jessica said then she will come with us, but we can't meet up with Matt. We said no. She cried and we left. Kate blocked her on everything. Kate's mother called us not long after, saying Jessica contacted her crying, saying Kate is in danger and we abandoned Jessica, and she's so concerned for my friend's safety. As I recall, she claimed to be concerned about Matt and basically wanted Kate's mom to tell us to stay with Jessica. It was actually incredibly scary. Kate found out from another girl, Jane, they all knew each other from a forum, that Jessica had been telling everyone they were in love and had even slept together. I don't know how much of that is true, but I've known Kate for 20 years now, and she's never identified as anything but straight. She denied it 100%. Jessica was just obsessed with her. And months later, Kate heard Jessica telling everyone she was saving money to come to our country to find Kate. She never did, thankfully. Other than the time spent with this girl, we had a great holiday and made some good friends. I still talk to Matt. He's great. Story 6. He got freakishly obsessive and possessive. We met online through a fandom. After a few years, the fandom pretty much fell apart, but a handful of us stayed friends because we actually had a fair amount in common. David was very normal, and the rest of the group seemed to love him. About 4 years after just being online mates, we met in person, and it went fine. We interacted a lot on Facebook and Instagram. I hit a really busy period in my life, but managed to squeeze in a Christmas get-together at my place for a little group of friends, including David. After that, my online activity decreased drastically due to being busy, and when I managed to get on Facebook, I noticed that most of the group were no longer friends with David. Weird, but whatever. I checked my messenger and saw message after message after message asking why I wasn't responding, what I was doing, could we arrange a meetup, etc. I explained I was super busy, and it was also coming up to the anniversary of my mom's death, so just give me some time, and we'll see about meeting up another time. He said, "Oh yeah, I forgot about the anniversary. You can have that day, but I expect a response after." Fuck that, I blocked him. So he sent email after email after email asking me, "What is your problem? What the do you think you're doing?" etc. So I blocked his email too. After 3 very peaceful weeks, there was a knock on my door. It was David, and he had a 6-page letter detailing why we had to be friends. I shut the door and used an anonymous email to tell him if he contacted me or showed up at my door, I would call the police. Went on Facebook and told everyone, including the 2 remaining mutual friends, about it all. And could they not share anything about me, my life, and actively discourage him from attempting to make contact? The friends who had long since unfriended him started messaging me that they had stopped talking to him because of how creepy he was being in PMs, personal messages, about me. Always asking if they knew what I was doing and if I had talked to them, if I was seeing anyone, if I was actually busy because he was convinced I was not, etc. In return, I told them how he'd been trying to convince me to stop being friends with them because according to him, they were all sorts of horrible things and that they were incredibly jealous and hated how close he and I were. I assumed he was just butthurt because they stopped talking to him, so he was just making up a bunch of crap about these people who had always been perfectly nice to me. One incredibly weird occurrence just before this all happened was me telling a mutual friend on Facebook that I was heading to the aquarium in London with my daughter. The mutual friend was also in London that day with their daughter, and maybe we could grab a coffee, let the kids play in the park for a bit. I checked my messages later that evening, and David was incredibly upset because he'd waited at the Farrington station exit for 2 hours so he could come to the aquarium too, and I didn't show up. We did not get off at that station, but one that was 2 stops after and close to where we were going. I haven't heard a peep in over a year. He has apparently deleted his Facebook and Instagram and thankfully just disappeared. Story 7. I met her after gaming with her for like 1.5 years. My parents allowed me to have her visit me for a weekend. Unbelievably, the beautiful girl, who had a lot of deep talks on the phone, was frequently flirting quite hard and stuff. She kind of was my first love interest. We went out for a drink with a few friends of mine. Started hitting on my best friend the second she saw him. She didn't even pay attention to me the whole evening, and the first thing she said the next morning was, "Let's go to his place." That hurt. That was 10 years ago, give or take. I've had similar experiences over and over until I learned how to be more precise and direct about my feelings, especially towards love interests. Today, I'm a self-confident guy in his mid-20s that's very secure around people, so I guess things worked out for me. I stopped contacting her after that, while my best friend actually stayed close for quite some years, proceeding to have some strange kind of friends with benefits love affair type situation going on with her. I don't blame him. She was a gorgeous girl, even though it bothered me at first. We are still best friends, while she has vanished into nothingness at some point. Many refer to my best friend as a bad friend for not respecting my interest in the said girl, but to make it clear, he did not flirt with her that evening at all. It was one-sided, really. Everything that happened between the two of them was afterward, after I quit contacting her. He asked me if I was okay with him keeping contact, and I was, since my interest had poofed out of existence that very evening. Story 8. The amount of desperation that girl had. Holy shit. The first issue was she used a picture of herself when she was younger and thinner. She used to be around 120 pounds, I believe she told me. She was easily over 300 pounds and couldn't walk for long. Eventually, she took out a cane. I didn't know how to react to a 21-year-old using a cane. Someone injured? Sure. Someone that spent 90% of their time watching YouTube and reading animes? Not fine. We walked, sat, and talked for a bit. She warned me she has anger issues and might snap at me at any random time. She would constantly look at her phone and sigh loudly. We met up basically on a date to see a movie. When watching the movie, she would constantly burp and fart during every romantic scene. She would cheer herself on every time too. In the theater. After the date was over, I didn't want to see her again, but apparently I left a good impression. She would call me constantly every night, usually crying about how much she hates where she lives, how much she hates why she can't leave, etc., etc. She wanted a relationship to rescue her from there. Life would be better if she had a boyfriend and just did her own thing. The only jobs she had were at fast food places. Those didn't last long. Each one is 2 to 3 months at most. She constantly smelled like fish. She dropped out of college because, in her words, "I couldn't stand the stuck-up people there. They really made it unbearable." Also, she does not like studying. After a while, she stopped contacting me. I believe that she had taken the hint and backed off. In reality, she went to another guy, who was basically the literal definition of 4chan's soy boy, though much worse. He can barely keep down a job. He can barely maintain himself. He drinks himself silly, and she is just happy to be away from her family. She started contacting me again, begging me to save her from him. And I'm like, I have a girlfriend now. Bye. She left a 16-page Facebook rant. I haven't heard from her since. Story 9. I used to draw a lot and generally browse 4chan. I was going through a lot of depression, and I felt alienated from my friends and family, as well as the death of a long relationship. Somehow, just talking to other people about the most mundane stuff felt amazing. I was in a few Skype groups. We would chat about life and play online games and stuff. One couple was nice, and the guy was trying to quit smoking. Another guy just got a promotion at work. You know, real people with life. They all were far away. Until I get this email. I was going to delete it because it seemed weird, but I read it. It was a case of mistaken identity. He thought I was the person who also did modeling, cosplay or something because of my email name. I corresponded and corrected them, but we just kept talking. He also loved paranormal stuff, was into films and writing too, and lives close by. After a month or so of daily talks and texts, we wanted to hang out. Between all this, I was moving out and in a bad spot emotionally, but he was very nice and talked me through anxious parts. I met him and sparks flew. No, actually, I couldn't look him in the eyes and got sweaty because I realized how cute he was and how much I felt like an idiot. We did kiss, and as cliche as it sounds, it felt like when Dorothy entered Oz. My life had color again. Anyway, it ended well because we're getting married this year. Story 10. So this one weirdly changed my life. So for context, I live in Ireland and my friend lives in Scotland. I met this guy on Xbox when I was like 14 and he's 16 back in 2012. got to know each other super well and talked every day and played Halo and Mass Effect 3 together. We did this for 3 years, and I would have considered him one of my best friends at the time, but I'd never met him. I knew all about his life. I'd spoken to some of his family before, so I was known by some of his IRL, in real life, friends too. In year 4, his Xbox 360 died, so then he got an Xbox One and I got a PS4. Because of consoles, we stopped talking a lot. We would catch up now and then on Facebook and whatnot. This all changed in 2017 when he got engaged to a girl I remember him dating when we were talking. A few weeks later, I started getting messages about their wedding. He contacted me to be one of his groomsmen, and the 16-year-old me made a promise that I'd go to his wedding, so I said, yeah, sure, of course. I had just f***ed myself. He later told me the wedding was in the United States, which means I had to start saving to go. Let's skip to 2018. I fly out to the United States for the wedding, and I get to the hotel everyone is staying at. I text the groom and ask where everyone is. They are out for food, so I go get a cab and follow out to them. I walk into the restaurant. He very quickly spotted me and ran over, called out my old gamer tag, and hugged me. I didn't realize how small he was. I'm only 6'1". I expected him to be taller. But after that night, I found out that without something to focus on, video games, he could actually be a little bit annoying, and I had just committed to being stuck in a mansion for 4 days after this. At the time, I was in a 2-year-long relationship with someone who was not making me happy. At the wedding, I met one of the groom women. There were 2 girls and 3 guys. And instantly we clicked. We both also slagged the groom, so we kinda bonded on that. We just got on super well, and we decided to hang out the whole wedding. She was also in a relationship. One of the nights we kissed, and after that, I knew it was over with my now ex. After the wedding, she and I were flying out on the same day, and we were in the same terminal. We had a nice goodbye. I got home and broke it off with my ex. That night, the girl from the wedding got dumped. We saw each other on and off for a month or 2, and after that, we started to get serious. I'm still with her, and it's the happiest I've ever been with someone.
What's your deep web story? Story 1. Back when internet relay chat was on its way out and peer-to-peer was in its infancy, I tried to download The Sims via private file transfer protocol. The guy I downloaded it from found a Trojan on my computer and walked me through how to remove it. I would take a bullet for that dude. Story 2. I found a guy selling carrots. It wasn't code for anything. He was literally just selling carrots for Bitcoin. 10 out of 10, I would visit again. Story 3. I first learned about the deep web back in grade 10 when this really strange, troubled kid in my grade was going on about it. We sat together in English and had a new teacher who wasn't quite good and didn't really know how to control the class, so for the last 20 minutes or so, she would just let us do whatever. Everyone around this kid's desk, let's call him Eli, would crowd around his computer and watch him monkey around on Silk Road and other weird sites he found. No CP or anything, but illegal substances, hitmen, and weird stuff in general. I was kind of sketched out by it, so I tried to avoid looking at it all, but I listened and it was pretty screwed up. Eventually, Eli decided to order illegal substances for some site. This was high school, so we all lived at home, so he figured he'd order DMT to his cottage, go up for a weekend, and pick it up to hide in his closet. So he typed in his address for some guy, worked out the details, and waited. He went up to his cottage the next weekend, and we all waited for his return for the stories. Eli got back, and we all ran up to him to ask if it worked. He said it didn't, and he was really pissed since he had already paid the guy. He complained to whoever was selling him the illegal substance, and the guy was really understanding and said he'd send an even bigger package to his cottage. Eli went up the next weekend, still nothing. The guy was very apologetic and said he'd send one more, and still nothing. Eli gave up and figured it was just a guy trying to make a quick buck. He gave up on the deep web, and that was that. Months later, he goes up to his cottage with his family and has a big dinner party with a whole complex of cottages. He's schmoozing around and overhears these elderly people talking about going to the cops. He asks why, and they tell him they've been consistently getting shipments of illegal substances every week. Eli had typed in the wrong address, and the guy he was talking to had been sending more and more to the wrong people each week because he just felt so bad. He was so sketched out that he quit everything and is now doing quite well for himself. I'm proud of him. Story 4. This was before Google, and most web pages were basic HTML with JavaScript. CSS was hardly used, and only discussion boards and some banking sites had mature front-end and back-end combinations. It was the early days of the internet. This is a real deep web story, not just one about illicit activities online. While browsing random blogs, GeoCities sites, and similar pages, I stumbled upon an odd page. It seemed like random thoughts from different people, but it was very well designed for the time. The messages were cryptic, like several people passing secret notes. As I went through the page's source, I found various IP addresses hidden in the comments of a JavaScript. I gathered all the IPs in a text file and started enumerating. Most of them were routers with banner messages I could telnet to. Almost all were at universities, and the default Cisco credentials from back in the day worked on most of them. But I didn't poke around. Some IPs were web servers with little to nothing on them. Most were Apache on Linux or some BSD, and there was at least one ISS server I could recall. Finally, I found a web server with a large directory of HTML files and TIFF images, and a few smaller subdirectories containing the same. An NS lookup revealed no reverse records for the IP, and a visual route traced it as far as Colorado. The HTML files appeared to be records that a psychologist or similar mental health professional would keep. The images were of faxes, apparently of both a military and medical nature. As I browsed from a subdirectory back to the parent, a new HTML file appeared at the top, named something like 1-hello-there.html. The timestamp was from right that minute. I opened it, and in plain text was a message, "We see you." No quotes, all lowercase, and about 15 seconds later, the server dropped. Story 5. I went on the dark web out of curiosity with a good friend. We downloaded Tor on my computer and went to the hidden wiki. My friend clicked on a random link, and we landed on a website's landing or homepage with images I'd rather not discuss. We closed the browser, uninstalled Tor, and changed my IP address. The end. Story 6. This is from way back when Silk Road was still going strong. I was looking for a certain substance but couldn't find it in my part of the world for a decent price. I posted my request on the forum, and after a few days, someone messaged me with an offer. For some reason, I accepted it and sent him around $200. Of course, I got scammed. I didn't think much of it but posted a warning to others about this guy, saying he scammed me out of $200. A few days later, I got a message in my inbox saying something like this: "Hey, I'm a vendor and this guy tried to scam me too. He just ordered an ounce of MDMA for me and an ounce of sweet sugar crystals is on the way to his mailbox. Please send me your BTC address and I will send you the $200 he scammed you out of." The next day, I had $200 back and a deep respect for the dark web community. Story 7. Honestly, it's not as exciting as a lot of people make it out to be. There are plenty of quote-unquote hitmen, but I am guessing 90% of them are cops or scams. If you are looking to get arrested, there are CP links everywhere. They are a lot easier to find than I had expected, but I never actually looked at them. There are plenty of illegal substances and some guns. There's plenty of snuff, but you can find stuff on Reddit, so it's not anything special. Overall, I wasn't looking to get arrested, so I didn't do anything besides browse the hidden wiki. Fun story, I used Tor in middle school to get past the websites that were blocked so I could play Congregate. You had to enable Flash for it to work because obviously you needed to play Flash games, but you aren't supposed to enable Flash on Tor because it allows you to be traced. I didn't really care though because I was only using it for Congregate. Story 8. Okay, so this is probably either one of the stupidest decisions of my life or it may be just the only redeeming thing I have ever done. So you all know about Silk Road, the defunct online you-know-what market that was shut down in October of 2013. The man sentenced to life for running it, Ross Ulbricht, is not the only guy who ran it. In fact, I don't think he was too involved at all. I have since moved and the person I am about to talk about has gone ghost as well, so here we goes. I spent a few months dating this guy, considerably older, who was probably running the website for 80% of the time. He was always online, logged in, and many times in front of me, he not only used the Dread Pirate Roberts account, but also chatted with who I now believe was the Ulbricht boy. My former significant other often joked that this kid was essentially his robot and worshipped him. I know he probably had over 2,500 bitcoins at one point. I saw other things that he is stupid for flaunting, such as his conversations that he would decrypt and save to USB drives as insurance, his words, of him discussing things with the police. Either he was an informant or he had them working for him. I think both I knew for a period of about 8 or 9 months that Ulbricht had not logged into the site portal because my ex became paranoid that the guy might have been arrested, killed, or turned informant. He pops back up and they start chatting like old buddies. Supposedly, he was hanging out with family and having personal problems. I don't know the specifics and have never told a soul. When they arrested this boy, my ex took off. He said he was going to visit his parents and lay low for a bit and then just abruptly vanished. I did see him as the last online ex hours ago on WhatsApp here and there, so thankfully he's not dead or in jail, I think. For those who might think I could be getting him into trouble and that I'm being a vengeful rat, no, I ain't. He's not a U.S. citizen and is most likely not in the U.S. Story 9. I decided to check out one of the successor sites soon after the Silk Road was busted. They had 2 or 3 bad-looking guns for several $1,000s apiece, some and a metric ton of weird research substances. I was hoping to see things I might recognize, like or heroin or LSD, but instead I got random mixes of letters and numbers and various pills or powders. It was a lot less exciting than I thought it would be. Story 10. Way back in the day, beyond the terms of a statute of limitations, you used to be able to use Kazaa or LimeWire and stuff to look at people's entire computers since they were stupid and set the entire computer to share. I used to send out an email a day to random people, pointing out that the pictures of them hooking up with their husband, wife, girlfriend, etc., and their social security number were freely available, along with instructions on how to install Kazaa and LimeWire. Story 11. I found someone selling a wish pill online. Basically, you're supposed to take the pill, make a wish, and it's supposed to make it come true. It just made me laugh how much they were selling it to make it off as something real. They made up fake elements that were supposedly found in nature and showed videos of them making the pill, which was really just a bunch of blue lights being flashed at the screen. They were selling it for $100 a pill. The sad thing is there were probably a few idiots who actually bought it. Story 12. The majority of these stories will all be the same because they all come from people who downloaded Tor and went exploring or browsing. The vast majority have found the hidden wiki and clicked on some links. There's a fundamental misunderstanding here of what the dark web is designed to do. Those links from the hidden wiki and other point-and-click entry sites are designed to be found. The most obvious are the darknet markets. They want customers. They put their URLs out there. They list themselves on the wiki and other Tor directories. They don't want the sites to be hidden, just the owners/servers. If you were to go to one of the directories that crawls and links all the live URLs it can find, most of them would be listed as unknown. Some will take you to a site you can look at anyway, but a lot of them will take you to a page where it simply asks for your credentials before you can go any further. There's nothing else. There is no link to register, no FAQ, and no indication of what is behind that password login. The whole idea of Tor's hidden services is that they are hidden from anybody who doesn't have the credentials to get into them. You have to get them some other way. There are no referral links being spammed on Reddit, the Intel Exchange, or general access forums. Some of these sites may be safe havens for dissidents to discuss stuff, and some of them might be the dark, spooky places of the no-sleep stories. But chances are, none of us will ever know what is behind 99% of them. Story 13. I was really into Bitcoin when the Silk Road scandal happened and I started buying certain merchandise online. The first time, I was very nervous about the potential of getting caught, so I decided to have the first product sent to my office. I addressed it generically to the IT department, and my boss, who's a good friend, was going to keep an eye out for me. I figured this would give me enough deniability if it was intercepted. Now, things went very wrong. Instead of the package going to my boss, it went to his boss. Now, the company I worked for at the time was a large behemoth with access to credit information on just about everyone in the US. Every employee was tested and we had random tests, and this could have been a huge issue. So I was at lunch when the package was delivered and opened. I was actually on my way back when I got a call from a project manager. Hey, so did you have anything sent to the office? No, nothing. Why? Duh, I'm not going to admit to this. Anything strange sent here? Nope. Well, the boss's boss just received a package and it contains marijuana. Well, I had enough deniability that while plenty of people suspected me, I got off. I learned something about my boss that day. He didn't tell anyone upstream about it, and rumor has it that he took it home and smoked it. Story 14. Not me, but my dad. I don't know if it's quite the dark web, but it is dark, and it was on the web. My dad works in what's called the name generation. Basically, he gets hired by recruiters on a project-by-project basis to call into companies with a secretive mid-high chain of command, typically with salaries ranging from $250,000 and up as a fake person, so that they reveal the entire inner workings of the company. Can't reveal what he says, trade secret. This is for stealing away employees, general knowledge, or God knows what. This entails a lot of research to get to know the industry, and it's usually something like investment bankers, video game developers, or insurance HRs. So one day, an unnamed client asked my dad to find out the command for the hired guns group that did work in Iraq and Afghanistan for the US during the recent wars. It was unusual, but it was right in the middle of the Great Recession and work was, well, work. So he took it and got pulled into a lot of weird places. Phone calls to stations in Afghanistan to talk with army leaders, strange websites, and worse. He even landed on a terrorist website written largely in Arabic that was a call to arms and jihad. All this searching for what was essentially military secrets, coupled with a few clicks on some radicalized Islam sites, eventually led to a single text message popping up on his screen. It said, "Oh, so this is what you do in your spare time." Now, no one else was home, and he was sitting at his desk as the message popped up. Needless to say, he freaked out, slammed his laptop shut, and called me as a more tech-savvy person to ask what happened. I was baffled. He hasn't taken a military-industrial complex job since. Story 15. While I never personally received anything from any deep web-affiliated salespeople, I live with a roommate who constantly receives strange brochures. At first, we received brochures for things like cruise lines, which I wrote off as junk mail. But they came so frequently and started getting stranger, like brochures for Christian mingle, petting zoos, and all kinds of services. I felt like someone was gaslighting me, but I never said anything, and the brochures would disappear as quickly as they came. One day I walked in and my roommate was delicately cutting into a brochure and pulling out a small baggie of powder. The guy had hooked up with the most low-key dealer I'd ever seen. Story 16. When I was a freshman in high school, my best friend and I were very into the whole deep web thing. We had Tor and would exchange onion ports that we had discovered and explore them together. We saw some weird stuff. Right off the bat, we found a site for a professional hitman, which we decided was definitely run by the FBI. We discovered a series of Chans, or deep web 4chan clones. Some of these were very weird, and some what we saw was definitely illegal. We were fascinated with those in particular because, of course, we were both ridiculous at the time. There were lots of disturbing and violent videos, lots of gore, and sometimes the two overlapped. We tended to stay away from that stuff. It was a pretty big buzzkill. Finding the Silk Road was cool, even though we never bought anything. Probably the weirdest stuff I ever found were the personal ads. Now, these were bulletin boards where people would just ask to do the most deviant, incomprehensible things to someone or vice versa. I think about the Craigslist when I remember those things and wonder how many of those people actually end up acting out those fantasies. Story 17. In comp sci, we often got bored and around. One day, we stumbled upon the deep web. The most disturbing site we found was a comprehensive guide for cooking women. We're not talking about a short joke here. This page had information on what body types to use for specific cuts, how to prepare these cuts, and how to cook the girl so she lives as long as possible. It horrifies me that people way worse than the freaks on Criminal Minds exist. Story 18. I found out about the deep web when Silk Road got shut down, so I decided to check it out and found Agora. I spent a lot of time setting up an account and finally deciding to buy something, a gram of MDMA, and it all worked perfectly. Then I started buying more for myself and my friends, and the next thing I knew, I was ordering ounces of MDMA at a time, thousands of LSD tabs, and pretty much every illegal substance you can think of, plus a bunch you've never heard of. I was moving all the stuff faster than I could buy it, like really stupidly, might I add. I ended up realizing that this was going to end either with me quitting or with me ending up behind bars, so I quit while I was ahead. I ended up with over $10,000 in profit and a nice little stash for myself. I took a trip to Europe and never touched the deep web again. I had about 1,000 empty gel capsules left over, so I filled a bunch of them up with glitter and gave them away so people could enjoy having their capsules covered in glitter. Story 19. As a regular user of the deep web, I remember one of my early experiences when I found a trustworthy-looking marketplace with the product I was looking for, good sellers, and other favorable features. I spent some time browsing it, and just as I was about to deposit my Bitcoin and make a purchase, my laptop suddenly shut down and wouldn't turn back on. My heart sank, and I was convinced that I had been hacked by the NSA or some other entity. I imagine agents on their way to my house to seize all my belongings and throw me in jail where I would be at risk of being assaulted. My heart rate soared to 300 BPM, and I tried to calm myself down while deciding whether to dispose of everything immediately. Then I realized that my laptop wasn't even plugged in, and once I plugged it in and waited a few minutes, it turned back on. The battery had simply run out, and I felt like a complete idiot.